I've held off on making this video for a while, but I think it's time. I'm gonna say now that I get that some of you don't like this film, and even after watching this, still won't like it. That's fine. My aim here isn't to change your mind or announce that everyone has to like or appreciate what I like and appreciate. I just want to point out what I think makes this a good film, and maybe reveal a few things that you hadn't considered before. No film is liked by everyone, so I'm asking you to be kind to those that do like this, and accept that it has a lot of artistic merit, because at the end of the day, we're talking about a movie series in which space wizards fly around and hit each other with glowing sticks of light. I aim to show you that The Last Jedi, for some, may not be a good Star Wars film, but it is a good film that happens to be Star Wars. So let's start out with a simple question. The Last Jedi is a 2017 film directed by Rian Johnson, who you probably know for his 3 brilliant episodes of Breaking Bad. Johnson is a director with a voice and a vision that is unique, and I believe this is why he was chosen. You may not like his style, but I'd say he did exactly what I'd expect him to with this movie based on his previous work. He's an artist, and I think when answering the question, what is The Last Jedi, the answer is that it's art. Filmmaking itself is an art form, so technically you could say every film is art, but the irony here is that the film that was slated for being a Disney cash grab with no soul is actually the most soulful and most artistic film in the series.
That's what I love about Ryan's approach to the story. It's like a real journey of discovery.
TLJ isn't perfect by any means, and there are criticisms you can throw at it, but one thing you can't say is that it was banged out double quick for profit. Johnson was hired because he had a vision he wanted to follow and to take Star Wars somewhere new by adding nuanced writing and themes. This was a passion project for him, and he became the only person besides George Lucas to write and direct a Star Wars movie, and I think he did a much better job of it than Lucas did.
Jar Jar is a key to all this. If we get Jar Jar working, because he's a funnier character than we've ever had in any of the movies.
I mean, you don't include this as your last shot if you don't love the franchise. What this film isn't, which has angered the people who simultaneously want the same thing again and again, but also something completely new, is the same formulaic Star Wars of the past. It's not as simple as before, which is probably why you see claims of it being pretentious, when it really isn't.
Amazing. Every word of what you just said was wrong.
The other accusation I see is that it treats the audience as if they're stupid. I think it's the complete opposite. It assumes that the audience can understand and follow more complex themes and characters. Sure, it has some things like the slow chase that make you shout, "Why doesn't the First Order just kill them?" assuming that short light speed jumps are possible. But even that's just typical movie making. It's the overconfident bad guy trope. Just like how Blofeld doesn't shoot Bond in the head and instead is arrogant enough to come up with elaborate ways to kill him. It's a Star Wars movie that also manages to be a gentle critique of Star Wars from a place of love.
The sacred Jedi texts!
Kylo Ren is a moody Darth Vader fanboy who throws temper tantrums because this new story isn't tailor-made for him and it's not going the way he wants it to. Doesn't that sound familiar? I think the one thing that everybody forgets is that every Star Wars film, and I mean every Star Wars film, was met with harsh criticism and claims that it was stupid or full of plot holes by critics and fans alike. Hell, fans absolutely hated the love triangle in the originals. The harshest takes are usually the loudest, but not always the most representative. Which brings us to my most favourite thing about this film is that it explores grey areas. For those of you who watch my videos, you might have picked up on the fact that I like movies that tell stories of nuanced and complex characters, and that's what sets The Last Jedi apart from the other films in the Star Wars franchise. Just like I mentioned in my Guardians of the Galaxy video, the main characters in this movie all make mistakes that have consequences for themselves and those around them. It's a story in which our protagonists try and fail and leave us wondering how they'll ever come back from their lowest points. We see that nobody is perfect, a stark contrast to the Jedi of the past who thought that they were. Even Luke Skywalker has realised that nobody, not even he, is 100% good, and that his biggest mistake is thinking, even just for a split second, that anyone can be so bad that they cannot be brought back. It's an understandable thought to have. Essentially, Luke thought that this was his chance to kill baby Space Hitler before he could commit untold horrors, and it's an instinct we absolutely cannot blame him for because, again, nobody is perfect, and everyone has their experiences that make them believe they're doing the things they're doing for the right reasons. He then becomes the embodiment of the much-used trope of an old man who wants to be left alone, usually after their last attempt at taking on an apprentice went horribly wrong, until a promising youngster comes along and they're forced to train them. Something which, apparently, would never happen with a Jedi. But In the cases of Rey and Kylo, they both believe that they're doing what is best for themselves and for others around them. They're both fascinating characters and sum up this greyness I've been talking about perfectly, as their backstories have led them to the opposite places they should have. Rey has spent her whole life believing she was sold into servitude, and has grown up around aliens who couldn't give a shit about her. She has a perfect villain's backstory but ends up fighting on the side of good. Kylo, on the other hand, was born into a dynasty, the son of Han Solo and Princess Leia. His life's path seemed destined to be that of a hero's, but it wasn't, because life isn't that straightforward. But even still, Kylo is constantly being pulled towards the light, a phrase we hadn't even heard before this trilogy, and Rey jumps headfirst into the darkness the second she senses it. These aren't caricatures, they're well written and nuanced characters who, when you really look at who they are, make decisions that absolutely make sense. Rian Johnson chose to have Rey choose not to resist the pull of the dark side, and why wouldn't he? A girl who grew up with that much hardship absolutely must have untapped rage and darkness just beneath the surface. Grey Jedi have been on the fanbase's wishlist for a long time now, and this scene in particular is about as close as we get to that becoming a reality. Luke and Yoda both come to the conclusion that the Jedi have to end because their pomp and arrogance and hubris, and the idea that the Force belonged to them, were their downfall. It was what drove Anakin away. I believe Johnson was making a statement here. The old Star Wars, where everything was black and white and the good guys were pure and the baddies were evil, is being left in the past. Morality isn't as simple as a black and white good versus evil battle where the good guys always win. It's a lot more grey. So why shouldn't movies, even Star Wars movies, reflect that? I don't know about you, but the stories which highlight that human morality inherently means that everyone is a mix of good and bad based on their environment and life experiences are way more exciting to me than simplistic heroes versus villains stories. It's what made Thanos such a convincing antagonist. He saw himself as the saviour and those who opposed him as the bringers of universal suffering. He's doing what he believes is right, not because he's generic Mr. Evil McBad dude. Snoke symbolises those types of stories, and he serves this purpose well. Some people were angry that he was very one-dimensional and he gets cut in half before we found out much about him, and that should never happen in a Star Wars film. But he's a very obvious villain with villainous motives committing villainous acts which he knows are bad. He's every bad guy who does bad things just because he's evil. This was Johnson's way of saying that we're done with that. There's only so much you can do with one-dimensional characters like that, and he is literally being replaced with Kylo, who is a much more interesting antagonist. While I'm here, this was a scene in which the fate of the galaxy hinged on how Rey responded, but it was also the scene in which the guy who was born with Skywalker and Solo blood said,
"It's time to let old things die. Snoke, Skywalker, the Sith, the Jedi, the Rebels, let it all die. Rey, I want you to join me."
Part of me desperately wanted her to say yes. He could have taken Star Wars on a new and insanely different path, but he didn't. He pulled that punch because even though he's pursuing his own vision, he knows what people love about this franchise and didn't want to flip it entirely on its head. Rey turns down Kylo because Rian Johnson respects the wishes of the longer term fans. Yes, I just said that. I don't think I'd have made that same choice because I kind of want to see what kind of galaxy spanning adventures the dynamic duo of Rey and Kylo would have as badass Grey Jedi. I also love that Johnson knew that fans were going to go crazy over Rey's lineage and immediately chose to have the guy who represents the next generation of all of that tell Rey that none of it matters anymore. The fans spent months trying to guess who Rey's real parents were, and Kylo Ren himself declares that she shouldn't give a shit. I agree. Would it have made any difference whatsoever if she was a Kenobi or whatever? Not really. For something as big as Star Wars to stay relevant for this long, it needs to change, to tell more complex and interesting stories. This film announces that the time of Jedi versus Sith is over. Our heroes and our villains are a lot more grey. I know that some of you, if you made it this far, might still be sitting there having disagreed with every opinion I've stated here, and that's okay. Again, my job isn't to try to convince you, and I will always respect the fact that people have different opinions when it comes to films, because art is subjective. While I was thinking about this video, someone asked me this question: do you like the film as a film buff, or as a Star Wars fan? And I've been thinking about that ever since. To me, The Last Jedi, as a standalone piece, has everything I want in a film. The writing is clever, the characters are well developed and nuanced, the storytelling uses familiar arcs that work, and the cinematography is the best in the whole franchise. But as a Star Wars fan, and I think a lot of us have very different ideas on what it means to be a fan, I can see why your individual experiences could lead you to not like it as a Star Wars film, even if you can appreciate it as its own contained movie. I know a lot of people had an issue with Canto Bites, which for me is just good old-fashioned Star Wars campiness and a nod to the original trilogy, which shows us that seemingly lovable rogues, like Han Solo, don't always turn out to be trustworthy. It also has a great tribute to this shot from the very first Oscars Best Picture winner, Wings. People had an issue with Leia surviving in space, which could only be surpassed by someone dying because they were, very sad one day. Something that ridiculous could never happen, But I get it. If you are of the mindset that a Star Wars film has to have a certain checklist of things for it to be a good Star Wars film, then this probably didn't check those off, because it is purposefully different to everything that came before it, as it tries to tell a deeper and more nuanced and human story. The thing that makes The Last Jedi stand out to me is that it's the most emotionally profound Star Wars film. It's intimate and personal. It captures and embraces those silent emotions that we only allow to seep out when no one else is around. Star Wars, apart from the prequels which made the biggest mistake they could by not doing this, has always equated the light side of the Force with love, and the dark side with hate. When viewed through that lens, our characters' interactions with the Force during this film take on a whole new meaning. The gentle theme running through this movie is that time changes us. It causes us to grow old, to change, to grow wiser, and to abandon the naive notions and ideals we had in our youth. We have to adapt, to move on and evolve, and so do our films. Let the past die, keep it in your memories, and cherish it, but embrace what comes next. And, above all, be kind to each other. Okay, I know I'm not going to have to invite comments on this one. I'm sure there will be an absolute flame war in the comment section of this one, but please keep it civil. Like I said, be kind. Art is subjective. It's something we can all appreciate, even if you don't like this film. Please like, comment, subscribe, anything you can do. I can't begin to tell you how much it helps the channel, and the support recently has been absolutely insane, especially for my Hunger Games video, which you can check out on my channel. I'll put a link to it here actually as well. Thank you very much for watching this, and I'll see you all next time.